University. 250 years ago, almost exactly, Brown took its first class, and it did something kind of strange for the time. It took people from any denomination that wanted to come. It was a Baptist college, but half the first class was from other sects. So we guaranteed right from the very start that we'd have lively debates about the issue of the day. And I'm happy to welcome you to continue this 250-year tradition of lively debates about the issues of the day. We who live in Rhode Island have so much to be grateful for. If you shout very loud from this spot, you'll be heard on 4 different college campuses. We've got a health system that's the envy of many states. We have thriving arts and creativity, entrepreneurs who speak many different languages. The rest of the world comes here for their summer vacations. But we face problems, and problems we need to discuss. Our unemployment rate is, last time I checked, at 8.7%, 2% higher than the rest of the country. Rhode Island rates dead last, 50th, in migration in. It's not migration in, really, it's migration out. And we're likely, very likely, to lose our 2nd congressional district in the next census in 2020. Our education system faces serious challenges, and the Superman building is still vacant. All these are important issues for us to discuss as we move to this next election. So on behalf of you all, let me welcome the candidates. I believe this is the first debate where you're all here sitting at the same table. Todd Giroux, Ken Block, Gina Raimondo, Angel Taveras, Allan Fung, Pell. On behalf of everyone here, let me thank you for giving yourselves this public service. It's not an easy job you have in front of you tonight, and it's an even harder job you have in front of you when you win the election. Good luck.
Thank you, Professor Marone, for the warm welcome and happy 250th birthday to Brown University. My name is Marcia Canet, and I am the CEO of the Women's Fund of Rhode Island. On behalf of the Board of Directors and staff of the Women's Fund, welcome to the Rhode Island 2nd Gubernatorial Forum on Women's Policy Issues. Women's Fund of Rhode Island invests in women and girls throughout our community through advocacy, research, and strategic partnerships to achieve gender equality. Rhode Island is a state with a very long history of valuing independence and equality. Just this Sunday, May 4th, we celebrated 238 years of our state's independence from Great Britain. The country followed suit on July 4th. In 1917, Rhode Island granted women the right to vote in presidential elections, and 3 years later, the country followed suit by ratifying the 19th Amendment on January 20th, 1920. This year, on August 26th, we as a nation celebrate 94 years of the women's right to vote. At the heart of what suffragists believed was that participation in democracy is essential to social, economic, educational, and political equality. We at Women's Fund of Rhode Island could not agree more. And once again, we believe it's time for Rhode Island to take the lead. Equality is a measure of our democracy, and without it, our state cannot and will not flourish. Tonight, we're here to have a conversation with the 6 candidates for governor about policy issues that have long been identified by Rhode Islanders as their top concerns and priorities. We at Women's Fund of Rhode Island are calling for our leaders to recognize that eliminating gender inequality and gender bias is critical to the growth of our state. Together, women and men across our state must work toward achieving and protecting equal rights. Our thanks to the countless partner organizations represented here tonight, and to our community of advocates who have sent us their questions for the candidates, which we will hear very shortly. Women's Fund of Rhode Island does not support or endorse any candidates, and we are grateful that every candidate for governor is in attendance with us this evening, so thank you. Now with that, I'd like to turn it over to our moderator for tonight's forum, Lisa Churchill.
Thank you, Marcia, and welcome to everyone. We're going to get right down to business, and I just want you to know that the format for this evening, the questions that will be asked tonight were submitted to the Women's Fund, and they will be asked via the screen, so they have been videotaped. In a few moments, I'm going to ask each of the candidates, give each an opportunity to offer a 1.5-minute welcome remarks, beginning in alphabetical order with Ken Block and proceeding. When opening remarks conclude, the first questioner will pose a question, again on this video, and the first response will be by Ken Block, and we'll go in alphabetical order from there. The second question will be answered by Allan Fung, because he's the second in alphabetical order. So hopefully that makes, it'll be evident as we go through it. You will have 1 minute to respond to the questions. If there's something that you wish that you had said in that minute but were unable to get to, please save those remarks for your closing remarks. We do have a timekeeper, and there she is, Ariana. And so she will show you how time is going. Terrific. A quick reminder to the audience, please refrain from any applauding between the candidates' answers. So thank you very much, and we will start right now with the opening remarks with Ken Block.
Thank you for hosting this evening. I'm very pleased to be here, and imminent happy Mother's Day to everyone in the audience who's a mother. I'm involved in politics almost exclusively because of my kids. I have a 12-year-old son whose name is Sam, and I have a 10-year-old daughter whose name is Anna. And I fear that they're destined to grow up to not be Rhode Islanders unless we get our economic house in order. We have a crisis in this state. We have an urgent crisis that our economy is unwinding, and too many of our educated children have to leave to find the jobs that they want. My daughter's a very interesting case. She's 10 years old, and she's in 4th grade. She came home all excited at the beginning of school because she found out they had a student council, and she ran for the seat, and she won. The night she came home, when I finally got home, she said, Daddy, guess what? I said, what is that, sweetie? She said, I'm the first block to hold elected office in Rhode Island. So that's what I'm up against. She can also she could probably do a thesis presentation on the master level. It's really quite scary. But this is so important, what we're all 6 of us doing up here tonight. The problems that this state has must be better addressed than they've been in the past, because the challenges that are coming at us are increasing in their difficulty and their seriousness. So I look forward to telling you my plans for fixing Rhode Island tonight, and look forward to all of your questions.
Thank you. And now, Mayor Allan Fung.
Thank you. I want to thank the Women's Fund and also Brown University for hosting tonight, for having this very important discussion amongst all the candidates. I'm Allan Fung, the proud son of immigrant parents who were both from China, leaving their family and their support structure, unknown word in which to come to live the American dream, and they chose Rhode Island. Rhode Island offered them so much opportunity. Providence was my hometown at first, and Cranston has offered so much. I was very fortunate to be the first in my family to graduate from college, go to law school, and come back to the state. It's offered my family so much, and I'm proud to be the mayor of the 3rd largest city in our state, which is also reflective of the demographics, the changing demographics of the state of Rhode Island. And during that time as mayor, one of the most important things that I've been trying to make sure that we do is to provide great opportunities, same type of opportunities that my parents experienced when they came to the state, for all men and women, whether it's in the employment field, or most importantly, for the business sector, creating a better business environment so that they can succeed and empower others. And I'm very proud of the fact that in our first 2 terms, we worked to create a business environment. Sorry, I guess I went too close, but we've worked to create a better business environment where over 1,000 new jobs have been created. And that's what I want to take as I endeavor on this journey to become the state's next governor, to create a better business environment for all individuals, so that it offers the same opportunities that it gave to my parents.
Thank you. Next, Todd Giroux.
Good evening. Thank you to the Women's Fund for hosting this event. My name is Todd Giroux. I am here tonight to focus on the democratic principles of equality, of putting people first, and economic equality and economic security, and affordable health care, Social Security, and increasing the minimum wage, continuing the civil rights progress and success in America. I applaud the work the Women's Fund and the National Organization of Women bring to the conversation of women's rights to the forefront in so many ways, most importantly in representation and in public policy, both at the local and national level. The 80 years of history leading to the passage of the 19th Amendment had its beginning in 1840, and since 1920, less than 100 years have passed, and we still see an expanding horizon of equality and opportunity to demand in this country. Language matters. We are all fortunate to live as generations that know, and education is the greatest equality, that each generation builds upon progress, tolerance, and expands civil rights. As governor, I will make policy to put people first. We know that. 1 in 2 since 1950 grew up without a resident father. We know that affirmative action works for women so that women can work. And we know the Lilly Ledbetter Act is working. So we know in another 100 years, the work we do to help the individual and family today will pay dividend for communities. I have an important message for Rhode Island, an economic stabilization program that draws on the 2008 Economic Stabilization Act. So I'll be talking to you about that tonight, how that betters the community in Rhode Island. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is State Treasurer Gina Raimondo. Oh, my list is in inaccurate order. Mayor Culpa. Pell.
Well, good evening, and thank you to the Women's Fund for convening this critical conversation. I believe that Rhode Island needs a new direction. I think we have to change the culture, politics as usual, and cynicism that held back our state for too long, and that we need a new generation of leaders to move the state forward. My experience is not that of an elected official. I served as an officer in the Coast Guard, as a member of President Obama's national security team, and as a leader in the Department of Education. My background and my values guide me in everything that I do. Discrimination is real in Rhode Island today. Discrimination is seen in the paychecks of women who continue to suffer a wage gap. It is the difference between paying the rent and falling behind. It is the challenge of women and minority-owned businesses to get their fair share in the marketplace. It is the promotion gap where women and minorities do not move up the ladder as high or as quickly as men. That's why, earlier today, I proposed the Rhode Island Women's Equality Agenda. As governor, I will stand up for women's reproductive health care rights. I will ensure that we have equal pay for equal work in our state workforce, and I will challenge the private sector to do the same. I will increase the number of women-owned businesses awarded state contracts. And as a former prosecutor, I will strengthen sexual harassment laws and protections for women and families from domestic violence. I look forward to discussing these issues and others with you tonight in the months ahead.
Thank you. Okay, now.
Thank you, and good evening. My mother always told us that if you want something done, ask a busy woman. So thank you to the Women's Fund, and thank you to all of you for being here this evening. Making progress on so-called women's issues helps everyone, and will help us to put people back to work and move this state forward. We need to increase the minimum wage, and we need to ensure equal pay for equal work. Recently, I rolled out my plans to end gender discrimination in the workforce, and I was explaining to my 9-year-old daughter that men make more than women for the same job. She's a 9-year-old. Her response was, "Mom, that's stupid." She's right. It is stupid, and it's time to stop it. Girls should grow up knowing that men and women should be paid equally for equal work. They should see women in positions of leadership throughout society, in government and in business, everywhere. I'm very proud of the fact that in the Treasurer's office, half of my senior team are women. That was a choice. And I'd like to see girls grow up seeing Rhode Island elect the first female governor. It matters to have women in positions of leadership because we take a different perspective to the job. When I got into office as treasurer, one of the programs I inherited was the Crime Victims Compensation Program. It had been neglected for years. 900 claim backlog, people not getting their calls returned for years. We eliminated that backlog, and I'm proud to say we expanded it to help victims of domestic violence. I have a track record of getting things done, and I look forward to working with you.
Thank you. And finally, Mayor Angel Taveras.
Thank you, and thank you for having us tonight. I am pleased to be here with you. Let me just tell you, I'm here tonight because of an extraordinary woman. I was raised by an immigrant mom who didn't go beyond 8th grade. She worked second shift in factories to raise her 3 kids. We lived in public housing, but that was great because it all depended on what she earned, and she was happy to be able to provide for us. We had clothes on layaway and at hope, because that's the way that we could afford to get some of the clothes that we wanted. If we were lucky, we got to go to Tom King. And my mom worked very, very hard to raise us, and she's why I'm here today. And I want you to know that because these issues are important to me. When we talk about raising the minimum wage, I can understand what that means and the impact it has on people. We talk about pay equity, how important that is, and the difference it makes for the kids who are growing up in households as well, and the impact that it has on women. When we talk about having a stronger education system, I'm a Head Start baby, that's why I'm here. And I want you to know that my record in Providence, where we have, thanks to the work with the Women's Fund, we've appointed more than 50% of the women, 50% of my appointments have been women to boards and commission. The fire department has helped increase the number of women by over 50%. The police department will be an increase of over 40% when this academy is done. And I know we have more to do, but I know that we've made progress, and I think it's important to continue to work together. And I look forward to discussing the future of our state tonight. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The questions that follow were submitted to the Women's Fund via video and are grouped by 3 topic areas: economic independence, equal representation, and accountability. I will announce the name of each questioner before the video clip. The first question comes from Ian Ross of Providence. Ken, you'll be the first person to respond, and then we'll proceed in alphabetical order. To the video, please. I do have a question right here. Yes. What will you do to address this inequality between men and women in our state?
Thank you.
Thanks.
There is no place in Rhode Island society or U.S. society for wage discrimination between men and women. There are already laws in place. Those laws have to be enforced. I find it frankly repugnant that it exists. It doesn't exist in my workplace. My workplace is divided equally between men and women, and it's really awful that we have this problem in our society. There's no place for it.
Thank you. The next person to answer this question will be Allan.
We must make sure that our workforce adequately pays men and women for the same job that all of us are doing. One of the things that I learned during my time in private sector and also the public sector, is that there are more barriers on the public sector side to overcoming a lot of those challenges, not only with pay equity, but also with promotions. And that's something that's critically important. The next governor has to address from both, not only within the administration to ensure that they're constantly having women in positions of leadership. And I've made a commitment during the time that I've been mayor to ensure that 3 out of the 9 directors that I have are women, and I'm proud of the fact that my first director of administration was the first female in the city's history to lead our city. And she and all the directors are adequately paid compared to men and their male counterparts. And that's going to take a commitment from the top.
Thank you. Todd?
I believe in putting more wiggle room between what we earn and what we spend, and that's why I talk about lowering the state sales tax. I want to support the child care tax credit. I want to reinstate the homestead exemption in the majority of the state. Lowering all taxes across the board. Talk about investment in our communities. Microfinance has been a winning issue and women-led issue. I think we need more of that here in the state. So when I talk about a commerce fund for the small businesses and property owners of Rhode Island, that's to create a reserve pool of funds. And recently I'm focused on the 2008 Economic Stabilization Act, providing many types of investments, small business loans, propping up the pension fund, all sorts of programs like that that stimulate jobs, and it's available for states and municipalities across the country. So spending a lot of time focused on that. That's how we're going to create growth and opportunity here in Rhode Island for women and everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Clay?
Well, this is a question of both fundamental justice and of economic growth. And I think we have to do a lot more than simply reinforce the laws that are on the books. White women working full-time in Rhode Island earn only 78 cents to the dollar for what white men are working. And it's much lower. It's 61 cents for African American women. It's 51 cents to the dollar for Latino women. We have to do more. I think we need to raise the minimum wage immediately across the board. I think we should have equal pay for equal work. And as governor, I will make sure that's what we're doing in the State House. And I will challenge private businesses to do the same. I think we have to take advantage of the advances that we have made in caregiver insurance and temporary caregiver insurance that we have in this state, and absolutely veto any kind of repeal of that, because that enables people to be part of the workforce. And across the board, we have to continue to invest in world-class education so that women are able to have the same opportunities as everyone else, get the skills they need, and participate in the economic growth of our state.
Thank you. Gina?
Thank you. We need a governor who recognizes that unequal pay is unfair and it is a reality. First, we can't deny it, and then we have to commit ourselves to righting that problem. I agree we need to increase the minimum wage, but I also have other suggestions which I rolled out to ensure that employers in Rhode Island pay equal pay for equal work, which is not only the right thing to do, but it's good for our economy. Number one, I think we should have a hotline, a confidential hotline, so that if you're an employee and you see wage discrimination, you should report it. I instituted a disability fraud hotline in the Treasurer's office, and it's been very effective to bring instances of fraud to our attention. Number two, I'd like to see Rhode Island be one of the first states in the country to have a certification process so that employers who are doing the right thing and paying equal pay for equal work ought to be recognized for that, receive a certification. That will change the culture and allow us to finally address this problem which has lasted for too long.
Thank you. And finally, Angel.
Thank you. I was probably the first candidate to have a pay equity proposal. The data shows that median wage in Rhode Island for men is $917, for women is $746. That's a big difference, and it has a big impact on families, on women, on our whole community. I want to do 3 things in my proposal. I want to strengthen penalties for businesses that violate Rhode Island's pay equity. Our statute is old, hasn't been revisited in a long time. We should change that. I want to conduct a state workers' pay equity audit to make sure we identify problems where they exist and that we address them as well. And I want to make sure that my Providence. I will do everything I can as governor of the state of Rhode Island to make sure that my appointments reflect our community and include many women.
Thank you. The second question comes to us from Tina Spears, a public policy manager at Rhode Island Parents Information Network. And Allan, heads up, you'll answer this one first.
Rhode Island recently made history by becoming the third state in the country to pass paid family medical leave. And proudly, we're the first to include job security for workers who need to take leave when they have a sick family member or a new child at home. My question to the candidates is, do you support policies like this that are good for the economy, good for women, and good for families like my own?
I absolutely do support a lot of those policies that provide flexibility to people in the workforce. In fact, during my time as mayor of Cranston, we have provided that flexibility, particularly with respect to our federal labor laws, to provide both men and women, particularly in the area where they have had more child, that flexibility to take the time to spend, to create that family bond with the children. And we have to continue to encourage families that have any type of issues, not only with child care, but also with other type of family issues that come up, because we're with an increasing reliance upon other family members, like our parents that become sick, or any other children issues that become sick. Parents need that flexibility, and that's one of the things I've committed to in Cranston, and I commit to providing that flexibility in the workforce as governor.
Thank you. Todd?
This year, Central Falls passed the Gender Equality Workplace Ordinance, and I think that would be a great application to the statewide level. It says that pregnant women can have reasonable accommodations in the workplace, and we can thank the Women's Fund for leading that cause. So I support affordable health care in Rhode Island because it ends years of discrimination, gender discrimination in the healthcare industry. Many of our small businesses here in the state now have access to affordable health care. It ends a lot of suffering and hardship for families. So I want to put people first, and so supporting types of investment I talk about for Rhode Island, planning a budget appropriately will help to take burdens off cities and towns, lowering the tax levels. So that's going to create the wiggle room between what we earn and what we pay, and we support people in that process. Thank you.
Thank you. Clay?
I'd like to thank Tina for her question and for shining a spotlight on rights which I believe are under attack in this state. Caregiver, the ability to provide others is crucial and often falls on the shoulders of women. And state child care assistance has been cut by 80% in the state since 2007. I think that we've moved in the wrong direction in that regard, and that I'm committed to moving in the right direction. I think that has been shown by the organizing of child care workers who've made sure that we're able to provide child care assistance and support them at fair wages. And I think it's been seen in the temporary caregiver insurance, where Rhode Island is a leader, but where this is once again under attack. And I think that we have to stand strong for these programs so that women and others are able to take care of the people that they love, whether it's their children or their parents, and be able to stay in the workforce.
Thank you. Gina?
The answer is yes, absolutely. We have to realize that providing flexibility in the workforce isn't a women's issue. Taking care of families isn't a woman's issue. It's a societal issue. We all have an interest in making sure that our children are cared for and safe and healthy, and have access to education from pre-K all the way through. And I absolutely think we need to do a better job of providing flexible workforces, because not only is it the right thing to do, women represent half of our population, half of our talent pool, half of our productivity, half of our brains, half of the people that are going to solve our problems and make this economy work. And in order to unleash that potential, we have to support them and make workforces flexible and supportive.
Thank you. Angel?
Sure. I thank you, Tina, for her question, and I do support family-oriented policy. I was proud to support the Paid Leave Act in important that we focus on what can strengthen the family. I think childcare is another thing that's extremely important. One thing that I can tell you is when I was growing up, my principal childcare provider was my sister. She was 7 years older, so that's who took care of me and my brother. We got home from school, my mom was working second shift. And right now, childcare providers, it's a challenging environment. And as governor, I want to do everything I can to make sure that we have affordable childcare. And on top of that as well, that we use those first years of life to make sure that we prepare our kids for school as well. So I absolutely do support family-oriented policy, and I look forward to implementing more as governor.
Thank you, and Ken?
I have a very flexible workplace in my office, whether it's maternity leave or medical leave. I believe that employees are extremely valuable, and you have to accommodate their needs, whatever those needs are. I support the family leave aspect of TDI, but I have a big problem with the TDI program on a larger scale, because the cost of TDI in this state is more expensive than the acquisition of TDI in almost any other state in the country. We pay way too much, our workforce, for the same insurance that we can buy much less expensively in other places. And I believe that it was irresponsible for our legislators to make the addition to the program without fixing the basic problem in the program first. When we fixed the TDI program in the state, we put $80 million back into the pockets of working Rhode Islanders who are paying far too much for this insurance relative to other states.
Thank you. On to the third question this evening, and Todd will start us off in answering this. The third question is from Stephanie Gonzalez, a member of the Central Falls City Council.
Dear gubernatorial candidates, as a newly elected councilwoman, I advocated strongly for the passage of the Gender Equity in the Workplace Act, an ordinance that prevents pregnant women from being pushed out of the workplace when asking for reasonable accommodations. As a governor, what kinds of policies will you fight for and move forward to ensure gender equality in Rhode Island?
Yes, okay. As a newly elected city council member, I advocated for the passage of the Gender Equity in the Workplace ordinance that prevents pregnant workers from being pushed out of their jobs when they need a modest accommodation in order to keep earning a paycheck and stay healthy. As governor, what other policies would you put into place to move our state towards gender equality? Todd?
I talk about putting people first, policy to put people first. As I mentioned in my opening statement, this question refers to, protections in the workplace are vital. When we feel like, we're not an island, when we feel like policy is supporting us, we're a healthier business, we're a healthier person. Myself, when my parents were ill, I took family leave act. It was an important tool in my life to be able to take care of my dad in his final days. So I understand that people who work with me know that I value their time and their skill, and any flexibility to be created. I am the openly gay candidate in the race. I am all about equality. I am about putting people first. That's why I talk about these commerce revolving funds, and that's putting people first, lowering taxes and creating commerce fund.
Thank you. Clay?
Well, I'd like to thank Councilwoman Gonzalez for her advocacy for women who are pregnant in the workplace. Because women who stand 5 or 6 hours in a day at a time actually increase their risk of preterm delivery by some 80%. And it's really essential that we go ahead and pass the accommodations that they need to have a safe and healthy workplace. But I think we have to go a lot further than one particular piece of legislation. I think we need to have a climate in this state which actually listens to all voices. A governor's office which is committed to appointing 50% state and board commission members as women. A governor who has a majority of women in his or her administration. And an approach to government which is about listening and bringing people in. Because frankly, in this state, too often the voices that are heard are state lobbyists or PACs. I think we need to we need to stand up for people who often don't have a voice. And that's why I'm running for governor, and thank you very much.
Thank you. Gina?
Thank you. Yes, I do support that. I'll go out on a limb here and say I'm probably the only one up here who's been pregnant in the workforce. So I have some personal experience with what we're all speaking about, and it's hard. It's hard. Not just, yes, if you stand up for 6 hours a day, but even if you don't. Just being the only woman walking into the office with 15 guys and being pregnant is hard. And having the courage at that moment to speak up and assert rights and ask for accommodation is also hard. And that's where government can make a difference. At this point in Rhode Island, we don't have any laws providing for accommodation for women who are pregnant in the workplace, and I think that needs to change. I'll go back to what I said. Women have so much to offer. If we provide family accommodation, pregnancy accommodation, flexibility in the workforce, we will be a more productive state.
Thank you. Angel?
Yes, thank you. I think that it's very important that we understand that accommodations should be made in a situation where an employee is pregnant. And certainly I don't have the experience the treasurer has with respect to that, but having had a baby with my wife, I understand some of the challenges from my perspective at least. I think it's important that we strengthen pay equity laws. That's another policy that can help tremendously. I think we have to strengthen early childhood education because I think that will be a great investment in the long term for us as well. There are a lot of issues that we must look at, and we must always look at it through the prism of what's best for working families in our state. And that's exactly what I'll do as governor of the state of Rhode Island, is think about what is best for the working families in our state.
Thank you. Ken?
As a business owner, I can assure you that compassion in the workplace is crucially important, and we need to do everything we can to make sure that our employers in the state are as compassionate as their jobs allow them to be. In my administration, I will have, I'm going to strive for a 50% mix of men and women in my administration. I believe it's crucially important to have balance in the workplace. And I know that there are a great many capable people already in government, outside of government, and I plan to bring them all together to achieve the best results that we can for our state. The whole idea of Rhode Island as the who do you know state is a disincentive to getting good people to come into government. We have to change the political culture here. We have to move away from you gotta know a guy and the old boy network to get things done, and I'm going to do that as your next governor.
Thank you. Allan?
You know, as I thought back to Stephanie's question, it brought back a lot of memories to a friend of mine, a colleague, attorney, and I won't name the employer, who went through a similar situation where an excellent attorney sat 2 offices down from where I was at. And she was committed to her family. She asked for flexible work time, part-time, still doing a lot of work at home if possible so she can care for her family. And ultimately, the employer was allowed some flexibility in the beginning, but ultimately gave her that decision: you're either going to come back full-time or, you know, we can't help you out. And in my opinion, that was wrong. Wrong on a couple of different factors. First of all, they lost a very productive worker. And that's one of the things that as employers, you've got to take into consideration what you're losing if you're not providing the appropriate flexibility for any parent, men and women, to take care of their families. Because they're going to be more productive if you allow them to do what they can do, whether it's at home or in the office environment.
Thank you. Blake will be the first person to answer the 4th question, which is from Jordan Deloach, a Brown student and also an intern at Planned Parenthood.
Hi, my name is Jordan, and I have a question about reproductive justice. Access to reproductive health care and access to contraception are important factors in determining a woman's economic security. As a governor, Will you agree to veto bills that needlessly restrict a woman's right to make her own healthcare decisions? And will you vocally support and sign legislation that protects access to reproductive health care, including safe and legal abortion?
Was that clear?
Yes.
Oh, okay, great. So, Clay? The question is, as governor, will you agree to veto bills that restrict a woman's right to choose, use your veto power to protect a woman's right to make her own health care decisions, and will you vocally support and sign legislation that protects access to reproductive health care, including safe and legal abortion? Clay?
Yes, I will. I will veto any restrictions on a woman's right to choose and a woman's right to reproductive health care. And I will absolutely support protections for women in their health care and their decisions. I think that this is a question, as Jordan pointed out, about the ability to participate in the workforce. It's a question of justice. And I think it's something which is really important on a national level as well. Across this country, governors and state legislatures are leading an assault on women's rights. And I think it's really important that Rhode Island stand up and stand up strong, and that we be a voice that we here will protect women and their rights to reproductive justice.
Thank you. Gina?
Yes, thank you. Yes, I would. I have been a proponent of pro-choice. I'm proud to have been endorsed by Emily's List in this campaign for governor, and I have, throughout my career and in public service, been a supporter of a woman's right to choose. It is between a woman and her physician to make the decisions that are right for her and her family, and it's important that we protect that, and further to ensure that all women, regardless of economic status, have access to affordable health care.
Thank you. Angel?
Yes, I would veto any legislation that restricts a woman's right to choose. And I was proud to go and testify on behalf of Planned Parenthood at the State House to make sure that as legislators are making decisions, they understand how important it is to protect a woman's right to choose. I think it's also very, very important that we implement the Affordable Care Act, and we recognize that lower-income women need access to health care, that any health plan also have a full range of options for a woman to make a decision about her future. So that's very important to me as well, because I think there's an effort going on across the country to limit rights in different ways, and I think we can't do that. We need to make sure that they have a good health care plan, and in addition, that you can make your own reproductive decisions.
Thank you. Ken?
The question of abortion is settled federal law. The Supreme Court has weighed in, and I have no interest in challenging or changing that law here at the state level in any way, shape, or form. As far as affordability of health care, we all need affordable health care, and what we don't have right now is affordable health care. As a small business owner in this state, the gigantic increase in costs that I've had to absorb with health care just about makes it unaffordable for me to buy the families in my office the insurance that they need. We have a real problem in this state. We have a problem. We have an economic problem. We have a problem where if we don't resurrect our economy, if we don't bring jobs back to our economy, we are going to have increasingly hard time paying for all of the social service programs that we want to pay for. What's really been left out of the conversation tonight so far is how we turn our economy around. I look forward to being able to address that for you soon, I hope.
Thank you. Allan?
I do also simply support a woman's right to choose, and I wouldn't do anything to change the existing law of the land. However, I want to pick up on what a couple of my colleagues on the panel had indicated about choice. That choice, when you're talking about the healthcare exchange, if we do decide whether or not we're going to continue to keep the exchange or not because of the cost factor, I would personally support an option on that exchange that doesn't just force, for all women, that option of, the choice. I would sort of support a range where it doesn't have that option for those women that would want to protect abortion if they, so not to choose, just to keep the full range of options available.
And Todd.
Women give birth to the world. A man does not bear a child into this world. Women, you have a right to choose. In America today, you have a right to choose, and your baby has a right to life. So I can only share a personal story and say, my girlfriend in college had an abortion without telling me, and it left a very large impact on my life. I don't have a legislative agenda. There's some that say I may be the first pro-life candidate in the race, and it's difficult to wear that because it's attached to so much violence in this country and so much turmoil. I can only share my personal story with you, but I will not interfere with the women's right to choose, and I will support that legislation as is. But just please understand that's my personal story and how this affected my choices in life. Thank you.
Thank you. The fifth question, and Gina will respond first to this, is from D. St. Frank of Providence.
Hi, I'm a single mother juggling 2 jobs that includes working with young women who had experience in the foster care system like myself. While I hold 2 degrees in addition to being a certified nursing assistant, it's hard to navigate the fragmented safety net without the support of family as we strive to get ahead. How will you work to ensure that women and our children can get out of poverty and into a brighter future?
Yes. I'm a single parent juggling 2 jobs, including working with young women who, like myself, grew up in foster care. While I hold 2 degrees in addition to being a certified nursing assistant, it's hard to navigate the fragmented safety net without the support of family, even as we strive to get ahead. How will you make sure that women and our children can get out of poverty and into a brighter future?
Thank you. Thank you. You bring up an excellent point, and it's time that we take a different approach to the way we deliver social services, and we focus more on results. We have services, they are often not combined, they are siloed, departments are siloed, they're not stitched together, and as a result, we're not bringing people out of poverty. We're spending money, but it's often not effective, and people like this young woman are being left behind. My approach would be to break down the silos, fund what works, and recognize that all of these issues are interlinked. If you have, I spent some time yesterday at Head Start Center in Cranston, and they do an amazing job because they recognize you can't just take care of the child, you have to take care of the family. You can't just teach the child. There are behavioral health issues, there are poverty issues. These are complicated, complex social issues magnified by a tough economy, and we owe it to the people of Rhode Island to give them services that actually deliver results.
Thank you. Angel?
Thank you. Let me talk about 3 things that I think we can do that will help. And I know that the Secretary of Labor, Tom Perez, has talked about this as well in terms of closing income inequality. 1, you can raise the minimum wage. That will impact a lot of women. It also will help, I think, all wages go up. 2, we need to make sure that we have affordable child care, and the paid leave policies that we discussed earlier, very important as well. And the 3rd thing as well for particularly children as the Parent Act is education. It's making sure that we invest in early childhood education, that we invest in cradle to career. I know because that's the path that I followed from locker closet to being here today. So I think we have to do all 3 and do everything that we can to work to lift families out of poverty. If you can lift the parents out of poverty, you've lifted a family out of poverty. And I look forward to working as your governor to do just that.
Thank you. Ken?
A quality education is by far the most surefire way to break the cycle of poverty. We have to ensure that all of our children, regardless of the socioeconomic backgrounds, receive the educations that they deserve. I'm dedicated to education reform. And what we're doing in Rhode Island right now really is not working, not anywhere near as well other states' educational systems. We have to raise our game, and we need far better results. Opportunity is something that is lacking in this state. And our economy, which struggles, which is not competitive with Massachusetts, is a gigantic stumbling block to everything that we've talked about doing tonight. We need tax revenues to pay for all the programs that we've discussed. The only way we're going to get that is to fix our economy, to bring jobs back to our state. We have to be economically competitive in Massachusetts. I have a plan put together that will make Rhode Island economically competitive, that will bring the jobs back to the state that we need, to bring in the tax revenue that we desperately have to have, to run the social security net that is very much in peril right now.
Thank you. Allan?
My goal as governor would be to create more economic activity, which will bring more good-paying jobs. And through good-paying jobs, we're going to get that economic freedom from employers to hire more, and that's going to have an increase. That's the proper way to increase the economic wage that we see in Rhode Island. And what I proposed a few weeks ago was a $200 million tax reduction plan that will allow employers, not forgetting those employers that are here in small businesses as well as many other businesses, the flexibility to reinvest those dollars back into the workforce. Next, in government, we have to provide more dollars for workforce training to ensure that those that are lacking jobs have the necessary skills for the workforce of the future. And I concur with my colleague here, Angel, about making sure educational system, particularly educational choice for parents, so that their kids can succeed and are properly ready for the workforce of the future.
Thank you. Todd?
The Department of Health and Human Service budget here in the state is $3.23 billion. That's 42% of our economy. And putting people first and streamlining access to services, for years now I've talked about there should be a computer-based program where somebody enters the system and all their choices in that flow chart is made available to them. So we do have so many caseworkers and service providers, and it's like that magic answer, the magic solution for a client is, it's locked in people's minds, and it needs to be more physically represented in a flow chart form. So I support that. I support 42% of this job of the executive in the state is to make sure that services that we can provide are available. Making sure that happens. I personally know homeless who have been lost in the system, and it's unfortunate, so we can do better. I support that.
Thank you. Clay?
Well, I think that Dee has asked basically the essential question of this election, which is how are we going to help people get a job, take care of their families, and raise their families here in the state of Rhode Island. And my answer is that I believe in investing in people. It's a democratic approach. It's the approach of making sure that people are able to have access to a high-quality education, making sure it's all people, and that the quality of your education is not determined by your zip code, and that we don't have a system of haves and have-nots. It's a question of then making sure that we give people the skills that they need so they can get into the workforce. And finally, making sure that we are listening to people like Dee and all of the people in Rhode Island who are struggling right now, and making sure that the Office of Governor is open to them. And that's why it's really important that we have policies in place to be transparent and not to be accepting contributions from PACs and from state lobbyists.
Thank you. The next question, and Angel, I think you're up first on this one, is from Erica Szymanski, who moved to Rhode Island to attend college and has chosen to continue to stay and reside in our great state.
My name is Erica Szymanski, and I'm submitting a question on behalf of all college recent graduates for the candidates in the upcoming gubernatorial election. As governor, what are your plans to ensure that recent graduates can find meaningful work or sustain good jobs to fulfill their own American dream and ultimately enrich the communities that we live in? Thank you.
Did you understand?
Do you mind repeating just the...
Not at all. As governor, what are your plans to ensure that recent graduates can find meaningful work or sustain good jobs to fulfill their own American dream and ultimately enrich the communities in which we live?
Well, thank you. I think it's a great question. It's a lot of people talk about the brain drain that exists, where a lot of people are leaving the state. One of the things I think we need to do is Nick Kishri. He's mid-20s, started his own business, Mojo Tech. They have 35 people who work there, 30 from in Providence and 5 in New York, and has a technology business doing apps. We need more Mojo Techs in Rhode Island. We need to create more businesses and have it, make it easier for our college graduates to create businesses. Charles Crow started a business in one of the Brown dorm rooms. He just sold it for almost $40 million to a New Hampshire company. We need a climate that tells young people this is a place to be, this is a place to start a business and to live. And I look forward to working as governor to make sure we create that climate.
Thank you. Ken?
We won't get the new jobs that we all need if it makes much more sense for businesses to set up shop in Massachusetts than it does in Rhode Island. That's just a brutal fact. We have to bring the worst of the taxes down that take us out of the running, that make us uncompetitive with Massachusetts. We have to bring down the cost of doing business in downtown Providence. We have 195 land that had very little corporate interest in it. Probably not for the least of which reasons is due to the very, very high corporate property tax rate that Providence has, one of the highest in the country. To bring our state back, we have to be economically competitive. I have a plan not just to cut taxes, I have a plan on how we pay for it. I'm an expert in finding efficiencies in government. I'm an expert in finding waste and fraud. And we're going to, in a very systematic, very fair way, make sure we find the monies necessary to bring our state to economic competitiveness and to bring the jobs back to the state that we need. We just can't advertise ourselves and hope that the jobs show up. That's just not reasonable.
Thank you. Allan?
One of the saddest statements that I can make is that our biggest export right now isn't any particular product out of the state. It's our student population. We're losing a lot of talented individuals. And it's a challenge. And particularly for students like Erica, I want to keep a lot of them here. And I recognize, especially coming from a small business background with my parents, people that want to start a business now face a lot more bureaucracy, bigger needs at all levels of government, as well as getting access to capital if you don't have access to capital. And that's why when I kicked off my campaign in November, I was the first candidate to announce a venture seed fund to help support many of those students coming from our college universities with a $5,000 seed grant to allow them professional help so that they can get, whether it's a lawyer, accountant, or anyone, to help put together that business plan so they can get their foot in the door and get access to capital and keep them here.
Thank you. Todd?
In preparing for tonight's forum, I recognize that on the logo Women's Fund says engage, invest, and act. And that's what I've been doing for these last several years. I've been early out to talk about a jobs plan and a way to pay for it for a number of years now. The bad deals on 38 Studios, it's hard to overcome these bad investment policy. But the fact is, to retain our best and brightest and to encourage new business startups, we do need to offset the cost of new business startups. I propose to do that with part of a commerce fund. I think that $500 startup fee can be a grant available. I think we can provide a couple $1,000s of seed money. So I think that's going to also increasing the minimum wage. This question came around earlier this year, and I said, well, geez, wouldn't it be great if they could pass the minimum wage to $10 an hour before these students graduated this season? So there's a number of measures I support, and again, lowering state taxes is going to create that wiggle room between what we earn and what we pay. Thank you.
Thank you. Clay?
One of the greatest barriers facing recent graduates is the unconscionable level of debt that they are graduating with. I think it is just wrong to be mortgaging the futures of our young people as they begin their careers. In this state, we have the 5th highest level of debt for our students, and this is not surprising when we have the 47th lowest investment in our higher ed system per capita. We have to invest in our students and in their futures. That's why I proposed the Hope Scholars Program, to make sure that we, in many cases, make CCRI free to those people with financial aid who are not there right now. It's why we have to make URI affordable again, And it's why we have to, across the board, make sure that our career pathways are lined up, our educational system is lined up with career pathways that are out there so people can get jobs. And one final point, let's make capital accessible to people when they graduate so they can get something going right now. Thanks.
Thank you. The next question, I think Ken begins again. And,
I didn't hear.
oh, sorry about that, Gina.
So it's an excellent question. The other night I was at dinner with a group of people. There were 5 of them, and they, between them, had 16 adult children. And they said that not a single one of those 16 adult children lived in Rhode Island. And almost every one of them wanted to. They just couldn't get a job here. That it is time for a governor with the courage to take on the tough issues, the ability to bring people together and get people back to work. We are past tinkering, we are past small proposals, we are long past Hail Mary passes like 38 Studios or special deals for someone. We need a thoughtful, robust economic development statewide strategy, which I have laid out in detail on my website and encourage you to look at it. We need to bring back manufacturing jobs. We need a workforce training program, especially for people who've been out of work for some time. We need to rebuild, to have infrastructure and put people to work, and we need a tourism strategy. And we need to get going now.
Thank you. Okay, now we'll go on to the next question. And Ken, I think you will start with this one. This question is from Providence Journal reporter Ed Fitzpatrick.
It's Ed Fitzpatrick from the Providence Journal. I'm interested in what you think about an issue that's front and center both nationally and locally, including here at Brown University, sexual assaults on campus. If you're elected governor, what would you do to make the campuses here in Rhode Island more safe? Specifically, would you support a law that would mandate that every college conduct an anonymous survey gauging the number of sexual assaults on their campus?
It's completely unacceptable that we have institutions of higher learning that have not been open in addressing the critical problem of sexual assault on campus. It's almost beyond words for me. I get so mad when I hear about it. As governor, any public institution that's engaged in that level of behavior will have immediate accountability to me, and people will lose their jobs if we are not addressing this issue in a forthright way and making sure that punishments fit the crime. For our private institutions, I support fully the idea that we need to have openness and we need to have accountability for those institutions, because any sort of sexual crime of any kind is a crime of aggression, and it's wrong in every possible way, and we can't as a society abide by it.
Thank you. Allan?
One of the first things that we have to do on a college campus is to encourage women or anyone that has been assaulted to come forward. And as a former prosecutor, I know dealing with a lot of individuals that have been victims of any crime, it's difficult to do. But that's one of the first things we really have to make sure that the administrations on campuses allow that ability to come forward. Next, given that prosecutor background, I know right from the beginning, whenever that's reported, they have to work immediately with the proper authorities, whether it's the local authorities or state police, whatever has the proper jurisdiction, so that if there is an assault that is criminal that has occurred, they're working right off the bat from a criminal investigation matter, working side by side with the administration so that no evidence is lost. That is important, but those two factors have to happen. And yes, I would support a survey, anonymous survey, so that we really know what the data is.
Thank you. Todd?
I think this is a good opportunity to suggest that we institute a telephone-based alert system. I think that would go a long way on campuses to protect folks. When I was a facility manager at Trinity Rep for a number of years, we were involved with campus compliance. So I understand that you can have certain code words over announcement systems, but I really think that we should invest in surveys like you mentioned, Ed. But more importantly, I think we should use our technology to institute some sort of telephone-based reporting system, and I think that's a good step in the right direction, and I support that. Thank you.
Thank you. Clay?
Yes, I would support a proposal like Ed is suggesting. This is something which is very difficult to do, which is to change the culture on campuses. It requires education, it requires partnership, and I think it requires state action to put out a specific protocol of when certain situations should be reported to the authorities, so that everything is very clear and that everyone on campus knows what is expected. As a former prosecutor as well, I think it's really essential that people know what is acceptable behavior and what is not. And that we have to start by doing it on our campuses, but we also have to recognize that sexual assault and domestic violence is a real problem in our society as a whole, and that in Rhode Island, we should restore funding for domestic violence victims advocates, and that we should also make sure that the governor's office is truly partnering with the AG and with law enforcement.
Thank you. Gina?
Yes, violence against women in any form is unacceptable. We have too much of it, and we have to do more. And yes, I would support a proposal similar to the anonymous survey that you suggest. As I mentioned earlier, as treasurer, one of the things I'm very proud of is working with the General Assembly to expand the Crime Victims Compensation Program, which my office runs, to include relocation expenses for victims of domestic violence. And I was recently with someone who was a beneficiary of this program, and she said, "Thank you, that saved my life." We need to support and fund programs like that to make sure that women and families are not exposed to violence. We also need to start earlier. We can't ever allow an attitude that boys will be boys, and ever allow this to be acceptable on college campuses. And we have to start teaching people from when they're very young, preschool, how to deal with violence, how to be peaceful, how to deal with anger, and know that it is unacceptable to treat women in that way.
Thank you. Angel?
Thank you. Thank you, Ed, for your question. The Providence police take sexual assault very, very seriously. There's one challenge, and that is if it's not reported, it's hard for them to investigate it. So we need to do everything that we can to encourage women, anyone who is sexually assaulted, to come forward, to report it, and make sure that we follow through and that there are consequences for those who would assault anyone. And so I think that's very important. I think to your second point, in terms of the survey, I would support a law with respect to the survey, because we need to bring this issue and make it an issue that is discussed in every single campus and in every single city and town here in the state of Rhode Island. So it's important to bring that issue up, to make sure people focus on it, to make sure that we have an environment where people feel like they can report a crime and that they are going to, the crime will be investigated and people will be held accountable. And that's what I'd like to see happen as governor.
Thank you. Allan, with the next question, you'll start, and this next question is from Adriana Dawson, a board member of the Women's Fund.
Women in Rhode Island run companies, employ people, and invest in our state. Yet recent data shows that business ownership by women, especially women of color, trails behind businesses owned by men in the state. As governor, how will you make business ownership and expansion of existing women-owned businesses a reality for more women?
I think one of the first things that we can do is to encourage a lot more minority-owned business, particularly women, that have to bid on public sector contracts. That is one of the best ways that, as a government official, that we can empower and provide that opportunity for a better business environment. But more importantly, as a whole, I think one of the things that we have to continue to do is just continue to improve our business environment as a whole. Once you do that and encourage, whether it's through the venture seed fund at the start, more men and women to start their own businesses, create that better business environment. They're going to empower themselves to grow, just like one of the greatest success stories coming out of Cranston. Small family business like Alex and I, taking care of their family now not only nationally, but internationally.
Thank you. Todd?
Okay, I've got a minute and a half to tell you about my economic plan for the state. 1 minute. Counting. Okay, listen up. The 2008 Economic Stabilization Act was put in place for distressed communities. They bailed out the banks. The people never got their fair share, okay? So when I talk about petitioning the U.S. Treasury, Rhode Island needs to reset our entire economy, right? To be able to lower the state sales tax, to invest in education, to invest in small businesses. We need a reserve pool. I want to use that for Commerce Fund for the small businesses and property owners in the state. If we start a $400 million Commerce Fund, we can provide thousands of opportunities for local investment here in Rhode Island. Businesses need, to invest in equipment, to encourage hiring, homeowners, expensive items to save for, furnaces, windows, all these things support a jobs plan in 2015. We need to fund and support a Commerce Fund so that we can have a result of a jobs plan in 2015. That's the cornerstone of my platform, and thank you very much.
Thank you. Clay?
As a first step, as governor, I would want to increase the number of contracts awarded to women-owned businesses. I think that we can do a much better job in reaching out to women-owned businesses so they know what contracts are available. And I think we need to do a much better job of certifying women-owned businesses so that they can compete for contracts. But beyond that, we have to start with education early on, making sure that women and girls are getting science, technology, engineering, and math education, making sure that we are providing business education, making sure that we are marketing and promoting our state business plan competition to women just as we are to men. And across the board, investing in career and technical education so that people can actually get back into the workforce at every age.
Gina? Thank you.
We know that women are terrific entrepreneurs and talented, but we also know they find it harder to access capital, harder to find mentors, and harder to, do the things that you need to do to start a business. We know that. They face different challenges than men, and we need to recognize that and provide greater opportunity. I'm currently mentoring a young woman who's amazing as part of the Year Up program. Mentoring programs matter. Access to capital programs for women and minority-owned businesses matter. One thing I'm very proud of as treasurer, I have joined a national movement called the 30% Coalition. It's a drive to make sure that at least 30% of the board members on corporate boards are made up of women. It's time that we face the reality that women have been left behind in the business world and address it with some of these issues to make sure that women have a fair chance.
Angel?
Thank you. There are several specific things I'd like to do to see more women-owned businesses. One, I'd like to work with the Center for Women in Enterprise, something that we've done in Providence and we need to do more of, not only in the city but across the state. Second, I'd like to make sure that we expand a partnership that we started with the SBA, that we go around the city holding workshops and making sure that everyone knows some of the resources that are available to start a business, to grow a business, to expand a business. We can do that. There are resources there. We need to make sure that we open the doors and create opportunity. I also want to make sure that we work with some of our incubators. Entrepreneurial Center that just opened in Providence. There are other incubators as well. We need to make sure that all of our women know that there are opportunities, there are resources, they're available there, and we want to help make sure that people have access to that. And that working that way, we can definitely grow our economy and help lift families out of poverty.
Thank you. Ken?
We need to increase the ease with which individuals can start businesses in this state, whether they're male or whether they're female. One of my plans involves dropping the $500 minimum corporate tax for all new businesses for the first 2 years of their existence. What the state should not be doing is adding to the burden, the startup burden of a new business, by taxing them the day they walk out the door. As part of the economic environment, part of making it better and making it easier for businesses to be successful, I believe it's the state government's responsibility to encourage and help our municipalities save money, become more efficient, share services. Why do all of our municipalities procure their emergency vehicles under separate contract? If we can begin being smarter about how we procure and how we spend money at the municipal level, we can drive down taxes like the inventory tax, which is a disincentive to business. We need to make it easier to do business in the state than it is right now, and that's one of my prime focuses for encouraging the growth of all businesses, for all people, regardless of gender or color.
Thank you. We're going to begin with our closing remarks now. And Todd, you're going to go first. You have 90 seconds to give us your closing remarks, and thank you very much.
Thank you. I do believe that women bear the hardest of hardship with unemployment here in America. There's 9.8 million people unemployed in America, and if we say women are half of that, I believe they bear the hardest of hardship in that. When I talk about putting people first, when I talk about a commerce fund for small businesses and property owners, that is so that we can put the people of Rhode Island first. We have been overlooked for too long. We've watched investments all in one Hail Mary passes, what we call it, right? 38 studios. So we've seen that. So people have demanded that we share the help that we can to the small businesses and property owners in the state. I've been on this mission to create a jobs plan and a way to pay for it for a number of years, and I think that if we ask for our demand our fair share of the 2008 Economic Stabilization Act, we can create those commerce funds, those infrastructure funds, and that supports jobs at every level in every community. It works to bridge the skills gap for men, for women, it strengthens families. So, again, in supporting the social services here in the state, we need to get it right so people don't fall through the cracks. So that's what I talk about. I thank you all for joining us here tonight, and thanks for your support.
Thank you. Clay?
Tonight, we have heard how each of us hopes to ensure that all Rhode Islanders are able to succeed and thrive. And that's the reason that I'm in this race. Public service has always been at the center of my life, and I will speak up for those who too often have not had a voice. I'll stand up against discrimination and against the attack on women's rights and liberties. And I will work to improve protections for women on issues such as pay equity, sexual harassment, domestic violence, and reproductive care. Throughout my life, I've been surrounded by strong women, from my grandmother, to my mother, to my wife who's here today. Growing up, I was inspired by the example set by my Aunt Julie. Julie could have lived a life of quiet comfort, but she chose a difficult and different path. She chose to stand up and be open about who she was. She did that because she knew that too many gay and lesbian Rhode Islanders were suffering discrimination every single day. Sadly, Julie is not with us today, but her spirit and her legacy can be found in the hard-fought victories of our state's LGBT movement. We all have a stake in the equal opportunities that should be available to all Rhode Islanders. My commitment to you is that I will be the strongest governor to advocate for the rights of women and for the rights of all people in this state. And I will work to ensure opportunity for everyone every single day.
Thank you. Gina?
Thank you. If we are going to finally make real and lasting progress to bring about gender equality, we have to start by accepting the basic fact, which is that policies that help and support women are good for everybody. Women's issues shouldn't just be a checklist of things that are nice to have after we finish all the other hard work. These issues, this discussion we've had tonight, should inform every decision we make. It should inform our hiring decisions to make sure that we have a diverse set of perspectives at every table. It should inform our policies. If we're going to have girls in high-paying jobs, then we need to start encouraging them and teaching them science, technology, engineering, and math so they can enjoy the benefits of that as they go on to have their careers. For many years, I've been a board member of Crossroads, Rhode Island, and several years ago, we learned that the homeless rate among women was skyrocketing much higher than men. So we addressed that by opening a women's homeless shelter to cater to the different needs of women. It is time. It's time that we recognize these issues. We bring about flexibility in the workforce. I live it every day. I live the tough balance that so many of us live between work and life. And we need flexibility because we need to unleash the potential and productivity and talent of the women that we have in this great state. And I just want to thank everyone here for being here, and to all of you at the Women's Fund who have fought on these issues for years. Thank you, and I look forward to working with you.
Thank you. Angel.
Thank you. I'm glad to be able to be here with you tonight, and I want to thank everyone for being here for this opportunity. I'm here because of the hope of a woman. Let's see if we get this right. I'm here because of the hope of a woman who crossed an ocean looking for the American dream. It's been my mother's sacrifice, and everything that she has worked for has been for her kids, and it's made a huge difference in my life. I can relate to the woman who asked about her 2 kids and how hard she's working 2 jobs. I saw my mom work very hard to raise us. That's why I'm running. I'm running because I want to make sure people have an opportunity to succeed. Everyone has an opportunity to succeed. To do that, we need to build a diverse economy, from technology to tourism and everything in between, so we can create good paying jobs for everyone. We need to make sure to have pay equity in our state. That's vital, and it's the right thing to do. We need to raise the minimum wage, which will help their families out of poverty. We need to make sure to focus on education, because if you want to give a child a path out of poverty, you need a good education system. I know this because I've traveled that path. And I want to thank the Women's Fund. It's been a pleasure to work with you on the municipal appointment project and making sure that we appoint more women to boards and commissions, including Johanna Harris, who's the head of the licensing board here in the city of Providence now. And I want to do the same thing as governor, make sure that we include everyone, that we open doors and create opportunity. President Obama said it well when he said, when women succeed, America succeeds.
Thank you. Ken.
I want to thank the Women's Fund for putting on this event tonight. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, 2 to 3 years from now, the projected budget deficit is estimated to come close to $500 million. $500 million. We have a legislature that routinely has problems closing a $100 million budget deficit. This imperils every one of us. It's gender indiscriminate. The only way that we can pull ourselves out from where we are right now and protect the social safety net is to become economically competitive. And I look at one of the most conservative states in the country who turned themselves around. They had a very poor economic climate. They had a horrible school system. We used to call it Massachusetts, and now it's Massachusetts. They had a school system that was ranked near the bottom, and now they have a school system that's ranked near the top. The model for change of what we need to do in our state is just north of our border, and they're there. They are our prime competitors. We have to face up to the fact that the only way that we are going to secure the futures of our children, to keep them here if they choose to stay here, is to ensure that the jobs are going to be here for them when they graduate. And the only way that we're going to make that happen is to raise our game, become competitive in Massachusetts, and bring the revenues in for the new jobs that come in to support everything it is that we want to do. Thank you for your time tonight.
No, thank you to the Women's Fund for having this very important discussion amongst all the gubernatorial candidates. And the next governor of our great state of Rhode Island is going to have to serve a very different, changing population and the needs within that population. And during my 3 terms now as mayor, I've been committed to reflecting that change, not only within the people of my administration, serving the people outside, in the private sector, the employers, the small business owners, working with each and every one of them, encouraging small business owners, particularly those of diverse backgrounds, whether it's people of color or women-owned businesses, working with them so they can grow and expand to be the next Amazon at the next level. And that's my commitment to all of you, to empower and all the people of the state of Rhode Island with a tax reduction plan to make sure that you have the money to start your businesses and to keep those dollars and invest it back into the employers so that you can create more good paying jobs for people. We also have to make sure that as leaders, government leaders, we continue to invest in our workforce and ensure that there are leaders representative of our constituencies that we serve. That's the only way we're going to know about the issues that are confronting all of us. And I've made that commitment to, in politics, supporting not only people of color, but women, whether it's with city council or school committee, and I commit to doing that at the next level to support General Assembly candidates so that all voices can be heard and more of these issues are raised at all levels. Thank you.
Thank you. And with that, we conclude this gubernatorial forum. Thank each of you for being here tonight, and a special thank you to the candidates and all of our supporters engaging in the political process with the Women's Fund of Rhode Island. I would now like to call Marcia back to the podium.
On behalf of the Women's Fund, thank you to all of the candidates for being here tonight and for sharing your thoughts and your ideas for how to move our state forward. I want to thank Lisa Churchill, our moderator, and Ariane Lynch, our timekeeper, as well as our community partners and their representatives. We're sorry, we had many more questions that were submitted. We're sorry we were unable to get to all of them, but we certainly appreciate your engagement in sending those video questions to us. We're grateful to Brown University for being our host this evening, and to WPRI 12 for helping to promote tonight's event. We want to acknowledge and thank our event sponsors, Amica Insurance, Hinkley Allen, and Luca and Weisenbach. Thank you for your generous support in helping to make this event happen tonight. To all of you here tonight, our thanks for your engagement and your participation. Please continue the conversation with us and continue to advocate together as we make Rhode Island the gender equality state. We hope to see you soon. Hopefully you'll join us on June 9th for our Road to Equality cocktails that will be held at the Lobster Pot in Bristol. We want to thank Jeffrey Hirsch, the owner of the Lobster Pot, for hosting us at his place of business, and we're looking forward to that event. We look forward to seeing everyone soon, and as we started with, your vote counts. So please cast your vote during the primary and the general election. Thank you.